Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, ma'am.
I hope I'm audible clearly.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, should we start or should we wait for some more time?
No, ma'am, we can start.
Okay, so in the last class, we had learned about the satellite networks and the types of satellites which are commonly used for communication. We know now three types of satellites, that is GEO, MEO, and LEO. And all the three can be used for communication. Particularly LEOs and MEOs are used, and they are placed at different altitudes above the Earth. So if you have satellites which are placed somewhere between 0 to 5,000 kilometers altitude, then they are called as LEOs. Between 5 to 15,000, they are called as MEOs. And beyond 36,000 kilometers, they are called as GEOs. So we learned what are these, and we also learned their use. Okay, so today, now what we need to learn is about this method of switching, which is called as packet switching. In fact, a little bit about packet switching we had learned in the previous semester also. We know what is meant by switching. Okay, first of all, understand a switch is a device which takes the data over incoming line and forwards it over appropriate outgoing line. So when you have to transmit your data over a long distance, you are going to require these devices, which are called as switches or routers, or we call them as gateways. Their main task is to take the data over incoming line and forward it over appropriate outgoing line. So accordingly, switching is of three types. One is called as message switching, the other one is called as circuit switching, and the third one is called as packet switching. We have learned all the three in the previous semester. Message switching was used in telegraph networks, then circuit switching was used in telephone networks, and packet switching was used commonly in the internet. So this packet switching that is there, it is a method of switching the data by creating logical blocks of data which can be of variable length, and these blocks of data are called as packets. So first of all, the packets will come along the incoming line, and the switch is responsible for transmitting them over outgoing line. So packet switching, if I have to define packet switching, it is a method of switching the data. It is a method of forwarding the data by creating logically variable sized blocks. Means you're going to create groups of frames. They are going to be put together to create a block which is called as a packet. Now packet switching can be done in two ways. One is called as virtual circuit approach, and the second one is called as datagram approach. Again, this we have learned in the previous semester. You people know that packet switching can be done in two ways: virtual circuit approach and datagram approach. That is connection oriented approach and connectionless approach. Whether it is virtual circuit or whether it is datagram, we are going to transmit the data in the form of packets. So we will try to distinguish between what is virtual circuit and what is datagram approach. Okay. Now, virtual circuit approach of packet switching is connection oriented switching. In the sense, between the sender and the receiver, a dedicated connection will be set up and all the data will be followed. Dedicated means exclusive. It is given only for that source and that destination. It can't be used by anybody else. Such an exclusive connection, when it is created, then that is called as connection oriented switching. So the sender and the receiver first set up a connection so that it is an exclusive dedicated connection. Once the connection is set up, then data transfer will happen. I'm talking about virtual circuit. It's a connection oriented method. First connection is set up. After that, data transfer is going to happen. Never data transfer will happen before connection setup. Compulsorily, the connection setup is required. So first connection setup, then data transfer, And after data transfer is over, termination of the connection. Termination means breaking, means connection is no longer required, it can be released. That is called as connection termination. Now, the advantage that we have with virtual circuit approaches, the dedicated path is already set up between sender and the receiver. So all the packets will flow along the same line or the same path. They don't take different paths. They all will move along the same path. Okay. And the next thing is such a kind of, method is very, very reliable. Okay. I hope the PPT is clearly visible for all of you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we have the virtual circuit approach where dedicated connection is set up. After that, data transfer will happen. Once data transfer is over, then it will be, the connection will be terminated. All the packets that we have, they're all going to move, they're all going to flow along the same dedicated path or along the same dedicated connection. Okay, since all the data will move along same path, data is not going to be lost, data will not get held up somewhere in congestion. It will all be moving one after another in the same path. So this kind of a connection is very, very reliable. But the trade-off here, or what you can call excuse me. Okay, so the trade-off, or what we call as the drawback, you can say, is compulsorily data connection, or the connection should be set up once. Only once the connection is set up, then data transfer is going to happen. So, but the advantage side is this kind of a transmission is very, very reliable. But sometimes when we are transmitting data, we may not require a dedicated connection, or we may not have time to set up a dedicated connection. That time, instead of making use of virtual circuit approach, packet switching can be done using datagram approach. So what is datagram approach? In this approach, there is no connection that is set up. So this is a connectionless method. Again, remember, connection oriented doesn't mean wired, and connectionless doesn't mean wireless. No, both connection oriented and connectionless can work with the help of wires and with wireless medium. So it has nothing to do with medium. It has something to do with a dedicated link. Okay. So datagram approach, there is no dedicated connection that is set up between sender and the receiver. Naturally, data will be transferred directly as and how the path is available, whichever path is available, along that path, data will be transmitted. So there's no question, since we are not setting up any connection, there's no connection termination, no need of releasing the connection. And packets are independently routed. Independently routed means they will go along different paths. One packet may be sent along one path, another packet could be sent along different path. So it depends on the router, the routing decision that it takes to transmit the data. But what might happen is, since data is moving along different paths, some parts of the network could be failed, some may have crashed, some parts of the network there could be congestion. So some packets get stuck in the network, some packets will get lost, some packets don't reach the destination in time. So this kind of a mechanism, since there is no dedicated connection, is less reliable. That doesn't mean it is not reliable. It is less reliable as compared to virtual circuit approach. Nevertheless, both the methods, that is virtual circuit as well as datagram approach, can be used for the purpose of packet switching. Okay. Now, we are now going to learn two important types of networks which are based on virtual circuit approach. So in the past, as and how networks have evolved all over the world, in some parts of Europe and in some parts of America, this kind of a network was in use, or this kind of a network was developed, which was called as frame relay network. So we are now going to learn two examples which are based on virtual circuit. One is frame relay, and the other one that we have is called as ATM. Okay. So frame relay, what do you mean by frame relay? Frames are nothing but groups of bits. Frame relay was a service which was developed somewhere in 1980s and 1990s. And this frame relay service allowed data to be transmitted at very high speed, and reliably it could reach the destination. And there was not much of processing involved. There was not much, say, too many protocols involved or too many algorithms involved. Just as and how frames are available, if at all you have source and the destination which are situated very far away, through a frame relay network they could be transmitted to the destination. The frame relay was only concerned with taking the packets from the incoming line and forwarding them to the appropriate outgoing line. So what are the features of frame relay? Let us have a look. Frame relay is a service of relaying frames, transmitting frames of data at very high speed. During those days, that is somewhere in 1980 and 1990, about 40 years back, these networks operated almost at the speed of 1.5 Mbps. Now, 1.5 Mbps was somewhere in 1980. Very recently, frame relay networks were also in use, and they were operating at a speed of 44.3 Mbps. So 44.3 megabits per second is quite good speed. So frame relay, for the first time in those days, discovered, or they developed a network which could operate at quite high speed and reliable service can be given to the customers. Now this frame relay has got only two layers. One is the physical layer, another one is the data link layer. Now physical layer will be concerned with transmission of bits, and data link layer functions will be error detection and smooth communication. Okay. Frame relay was very, very useful for bursty data. Now what do you mean by bursty data? Whenever we talk about computers, sometimes computers have a lot of data to be transmitted. Sometimes they are idle. I'll give you one example. Imagine you are having a computer at home, and you are, during the day, you are sending one or two emails, you're chatting with someone for some time, and most of the time your computer is shut down or it is idle. Now, what does that mean? Only when you get connected to the internet, that time traffic is there. That time your computer is sending data. Other time your computer is idle. So there are bursts of data. All of a sudden, there's a lot of data to be sent. All of a sudden, from the computer, there's nothing to be sent. This is called as bursty traffic, or it is also called as bursty data. Burst means all of a sudden you have a lot of data to send, and all of a sudden there's nothing. So for such bursty data, frame relay was a very useful service. Frame relay allowed to transmit frames whose size can be up to 9,000 bytes. So 9,000 bytes in the sense, any type of LAN like Ethernet, token ring, or maybe FDDI, they could make use of frame relay for long distance transmission when they are transmitting data. Now, in those days, this frame relay service was less expensive as compared to other wide area networks. Frame relay is basically a wide area network which will allow transmission over long distance. Okay, so error detection is done in data link control. There's no question of flow control, because frame relay was not at all concerned more about reliability. It was more concerned about just transmitting the frames to the destination. So by chance any one frame gets lost or damaged, there was no retransmission policy also. Just make the data available to the destination at high speed. That was the only service that was made available. Okay, so you can have a look at how frame relay operates. This is the architecture of frame relay. Now, can you all see? You can have a small LAN or an individual computer which is made up of a LAN which is made up of many computers which are connected to each other. Now imagine you are sitting on one of these computers and you want to send the data to some friend who is very far away, maybe New York. Okay, then what can you do? You can make use of the frame relay network. Can you see the middle portion of the diagram? Now this middle portion of the diagram is a subnet. This subnet would be made up of routers and transmission lines, and this subnet would be operating with the help of frame relay. So this frame relay network is a wide area network. When the data gets generated on the LAN, Through a router, it is transmitted to the nearest frame relay switch. From there, a dedicated connection is set up till the destination, and along the different switches, the data will reach the destination router and then maybe to other parts of the world, maybe to the internet also it can be connected. So can you see this frame relay network now? So frame relay will operate as a WAN, wide area network. Okay, so when your data comes via the switches, the bits will be transmitted. Whenever the data is moving from one switch to another, error detection is also going to happen. So only two layer functions will come into picture, the physical layer and the data link layer. So frame relay, as I told you, has got only two layers, the physical layer and the data link layer. Physical layer will operate with all ANSI standards, that is American National Standards Institute. Basically, it supports even any LAN like Ethernet and all that. So when you are going to transmit the data in the physical layer, it will transmit in the form of frames. And in the data link layer, you can think of group of bits, in physical layer in the form of bits. And in data link layer, a group of bits are grouped together, put together to form a frame. So basic functions are there like error detection, and maybe from one adjacent device to another adjacent device when the data is moving, just take the frame as it is coming. So very simplified functions are there in the data link layer. It is not at all complicated. Simple error detection mechanisms are implemented to check whether the frame is correct or not. Okay. Now, this is the frame format. Whenever we are going to use frame relay, this is the frame format. We have learned some of the frame format in previous semester. For example, Ethernet frame format we know, or token ring frame format we know. So this is for the frame format of frame relay. You all can see what all is there. The beginning of the frame and the end of the frame is indicated with the help of this field, which is called as flag. Flag indicates the beginning of the frame and flag indicates the end of the frame. So to distinguish the boundary of the frame, the flag fields are used. Then we have the header field, which can contain the address part, a frame relay header part or address part. Then comes the information field, which contains your actual data that you want to transmit to the destination. Then comes the FCS field, that is frame check sequence field. This field is concerned with, you can have CRC or you can have checksum or single parity check. So many methods are there for error detection. One such method will be used for frame check sequence. Generally, CRC method is implemented to check whether there are any errors in the frame. So there are very few fields in the frame, and have a look at those fields. Flag indicates beginning and flag indicates end of the frame. Header part is there, which contains control information necessary to transmit the frame through the network. And then the actual data that you want to send is put in the information field. Then comes FCS, which includes frame check sequence. That is, some error detection method is used in order to check if any errors have occurred in the data. Okay. So this is about frame relay. Next, what we have to learn is ATM networks. Now, before I tell you ATM networks, you tell me whether you followed what is frame relay. Did everybody follow frame relay? Frame relay is a service for transmitting the data over long distance. Okay. And these are its features. Now, frame relay has got this kind of a architecture. And these are some of the layers of frame relay. Only two layers, physical layer and data link layer. Very basic functions are happening using frame relay. So that is why it is very fast. Not much time is going to be spent on too many, complicated protocols or too many complicated algorithms and so on. This is the frame format. Okay, and these are the fields of the frame. All right. Now I want you all to enter your attendance first. Some people are giving attendance and leaving also. Even before I have terminated or I have closed the class. I have not. Okay. Next, what we have to learn is ATM networks. All right. Now, just like frame relay is a service which allows transmission of data over long distances, particularly it operates in a WAN. Similar to that, somewhere in 1990s and after late 1990s, this kind of a network was developed, which was called as ATM network. ATM stands for asynchronous transfer mode. Now, this ATM has got nothing to do with your ATM from which you withdraw your money. No, that ATM is different. That is automated teller machine. And this is asynchronous transfer mode. So don't confuse yourself. ATM network means you can withdraw money through your bank. No, that ATM is completely different. This ATM is completely different. ATM here refers to asynchronous transfer mode. It was a network which was developed for a protocol that was designed by the ATM forum, and they were particularly concerned with transmitting data as small packets, which are known as cells. So rather than calling it as a packet network, we call it as a cell network. Okay. Cells are nothing but small packets. Instead of having very large packets of data, the ATM network decided to create a network which operates on small packets of data, and these small packets of data are called as cells. So a cell is a small data unit, okay, not very large. It's a small data unit of fixed size. In some other networks, you know, they were variable size packets. Variable size means their size can vary, it can change. Some packets are small, some packets are very large, some are medium size. But here the packet is of, generally about 53 bytes or something. So it's a very small packet, and that's why instead of calling it as a packet, it is called as cell. So as in how the machines which are source or which are destinations, terminal machines, they generate the data, they will generate data in the form of cells. These cells which are coming from different devices are combined together, that is multiplexed together, and then they are sent. For the sake of multiplexing, this network makes use of time division multiplexing. Now we have learned multiplexing in the previous semester. Frequency division multiplexing is there, time division multiplexing is there, and wavelength division multiplexing is there. So this was a completely digital network. That's why they implemented time division multiplexing. Now this time division multiplexing method will take the data from different sources, combine them and transmit them in a time division manner over a channel. So if you all can see this diagram, it's not very clear. Imagine there's source 1, then there's source 2, then there's source 3. Source 1 or A will transmit its packets, that is cells, A1, A2, A3. B will transmit its packets, B1, B2. C will transmit its packets, C1, C2, C3. So when the data comes from these slots, time slots, whenever it comes to the multiplexer, it will take the data from each of the devices, multiplex them and transmit them. Since, time slots are, not going to be, if at all any data is not, does not want to send the data, any of the machine does not want to send the data, then the time slot is not going to become idle. And that's why asynchronous time division multiplexing is implemented in case of ATM network. Now you all can see the architecture of ATM network. Now the middle part that we have here, this is the subnet, okay? And this is where the ATM network will process the data. So ATM, there could be endpoints or terminals, which are devices through which data or cells are generated. These cells are sent to the subnet, which is ATM network. The subnet consists of switch and transmission lines. Whenever data comes from these endpoints, it will be generated at a particular speed, and then it will come into the subnet. So there is an interface between the endpoints, which is users, and the network. This is defined in ATM network as UNI, user network interface. Means from the user's terminal, it is going into the network. So this interface is quite important. The data comes from multiple devices and comes to the switch. This interface is called as UNI, that is user network interface. Inside the subnet, there are many switches. So each of the switch will take the data over incoming line and forward it over outgoing line. So if at all one switch is transmitting the data to another switch, one switch is connected to another switch, the interface between one switch to another is called as NNI. NNI stands for network to network interface, means the interface that exists among two devices present inside the network. Here a user means outside the network, so it is called as UNI. And switches means inside the network, so it is called as NNI. So between two switches, the network to network interface will define how the data will be transmitted over the ATM. So from one switch to another and so on, whether it is NNI or whether it is UNI, remember ATM networks always operate as virtual circuits. That means they will set up a connection and a dedicated connection is created to transmit the data. Okay. So now, whenever, have a look at this particular diagram once again. Whenever we are transmitting the data, suppose we have a machine A and this side we have a machine B. From A to this switch, then to the next switch, then to the next switch, then to the device that is B. A complete dedicated connection is set up. And from each device, there can be multiple connections. One switch can handle multiple connections. For example, this switch is connected to 4 other devices. So how to identify the devices, how to know the packet is coming from which device? So in ATM networks, particularly in virtual circuit, there is an identifier or a number which identifies the connection, which is called as VCI, virtual connection identifier. And many such VCIs will transmit through one path. That path is called as VPI, virtual path identifier. So there are going to be two things. One is VCI and the other one is VPI. So if at all you're talking about this switch, there could be, VCI from 1, VCI from 2, VCI from 3, VCI from 4. And this switch will have multiple paths through one path, multiple wires, like through one path, multiple VCIs will move. So every connection will be identified by two things: the VPI, virtual path identifier, and virtual circuit identifier. So you all can see, I want you all to have a look at this diagram, which is connecting multiple devices to this switch. Many connections are going to come to one switch. When they come to one switch, this is how it may look. So there's a path VPI 14, the number is 14, and it is handling VCI number 21, VCI number 22, VCI number 45. So 3 virtual circuits are being passed through one path. Hence, every connection will be identified by two things. VPI, for example, if you're looking at this diagram, one second. If you're looking at this diagram, this is a connection, this is a path through which multiple connections are moving. So this path is identified as VPI 14. And in 14, there are 3 connections, 21, number 32, and number 45. So how is one connection going to be identified? With the help of VPI and with the help of VCI. For example, this VCI number 21 will be identified as 14,21. 14 is the path number and 21 is the connection number, because through one path, multiple connections are set up. Getting? Now, this ATM network, as I told you, it's a connection oriented network. It operates using 2 virtual circuit modes. One is called as permanent virtual circuit mode. The second one is called as switched virtual circuit mode. Permanent virtual circuit means all the time connection is set up. It's never broken. There could be some users who need data connection to be there all the time. Then in that case, permanent virtual circuit will work. But there could be some users who have very little data throughout the day. They have, say, for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, they're going to transmit the data. Only at the time of transmitting the data, they set up a connection that is called a switched virtual circuit. So understand the difference between permanent and switched. Permanent means throughout 24/7, a connection is all the time set up. Switched means only when required the connection is set up, and after that data transmission is going to happen. Okay. All right. So now look at the cell format. If at all we are going to transmit data using ATM networks, I told you data will be transmitted as small packets, and these packets are called as cells. So this cell is a very simple, it has got a very simple format. Every cell will have two parts. One is the header part and the other one is the payload part. Can you all see? Every cell has got two parts, the header part and the payload part. Header part is only 5 bytes long. That header part is 5 bytes long. And what does the header contain? The virtual path identifier and the virtual circuit identifier. The remaining part is a payload part, which contains your actual data that you want to transmit, and it is made up of 48 bytes. So 48 plus 5, the total number of bytes, look at it, they are very, very small. The total number of bytes that are there in a cell is only 53 bytes. So they are not very large packet, very, very small packets. That's why they are called as cells. Now ATM has got 3 layers: physical layer, ATM layer, and application adaptation layer. You need not know much about them, but at least remember physical layer is concerned with transmission of bits. ATM layer is concerned with routing and traffic management, and application adaptation layer is like transport layer. It is concerned with segmentation and reassembly of frame. If your frame has to be, if at all the frame gets broken into smaller pieces, if the frame is very large, then it has to be broken down into smaller pieces called as cells. So fragmentation of packet has to happen to convert it into cell. And at the other side, many cells have to be put together to form a frame. So fragmentation and reassembly of cells is going to be done with the help of application adaptation layer. So ATM has got 3 important layers. One is physical layer, concerned with transmission of bits. ATM layer, concerned with routing of data and traffic management. Third is application adaptation layer, concerned with breaking a large packet into small size packets, which are called as cells. So that we call it as fragmentation. And at the destination side, you have to group many cells into one frame, that is called as reassembly. So fragmentation and reassembly are done with the help of application adaptation layer. Okay, so I have told you quite a few points about ATM networks. Okay, ATM stands for asynchronous transfer mode, and it is going to transmit the data as cells. It makes use of TDM, time division multiplexing. Okay, this is the architecture of an ATM network. There are going to be 2 types of interfaces. One is at the endpoints, one more is inside the network. At endpoints, it is called as user network interface, and inside the network, it is called as network interface. All ATM networks will work in virtual circuit mode. There are 2 virtual circuit modes: permanent virtual circuit and switched virtual circuit. Permanent means all the time the connection is set up, and switched means only when required connection is set up, after that it is broken. Every transmission line will handle multiple connections. So a set of connections are grouped together to form a path. Hence, in ATM, there are 2 identifiers. Identifiers means numbers. One is the VPI, virtual path identifier. The second one is VCI, virtual circuit identifier. So every connection has got a unique set of numbers. VPI and VCI together will give a unique pair that will identify the connection. The ATM cells are 53 bytes long, 5 byte header and 48 bytes will be payload. Payload means actual data, information. So in 5 bytes, one is the virtual path identifier, the other one is virtual circuit identifier. Together, it will decide to which destination your data has to go. There's no destination address because we are going to have virtual circuit mode. And in the payload part, the actual data which can be up to 48 bytes. These are the layers of ATM. physical layer, ATM layer, and application adaptation layer. Physical layer is concerned with transmission of bits, ATM layer with routing and traffic management, and application adaptation layer with splitting the frames into cells and putting them back, reassembling the cells into frames. Okay. This finishes your first unit of your syllabus. If you have any doubts, you can ask me. Today also you can ask me, or even in the next class. I'll be sharing the notes of this chapter very soon with your CR. Okay. If you have any doubts, you can ask. All right. We'll stop here.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Thank you.
ma'am.
Thank you.